Hi, this is Levi. Before we get into this episode, I wanted to take a quick minute to introduce a few of the other podcasts in the WCF Podcast Network. Tom and Naomi are exploring how we interact in our ecclesial relationships in From the Platform. It's a very in-depth series that is incredibly helpful for understanding and developing compassion and better listening practices. That's From the Platform. Sam Taylor from Cleveland, Ohio, produces weekly devotionals in Pause to Consider. Think Mr. Rogers meets Fireside Chat. I love Sam's humble style and think every episode is fantastic. You can find both of those wherever you get your podcasts or on our website at wcfoundation.org. Now, here's the show.
Welcome back to A Little Faith. This is a podcast sponsored by the Williamsburg Christadelphian Foundation. A Little Faith podcast explores both the challenges and hope of living a life of faith. I'm Steve, and I'm here with Trevor Routledge. Since he's retired from his role as a change manager for the chocolate company Cadbury's, Trevor has been involved with a charity called Meal A Day. He's going to share some transformational stories with us from projects in Kenya. We're also going to talk about change, diversity, and inclusion to spread the message of Jesus in the way that's relevant to people today. So, what, actually for our audience, fill us in. What is Meal A Day? What does it do? How are you involved?
Right. Well, Meal A Day is a charity. It's a Christadelphian charity. And its purpose is just to share the love that we have received from God. And we do that in different ways. We provide food, we provide water and sanitation, we provide health and medicines, we provide accommodation, and we provide education. But when I say we provide, we don't actually provide any of them. We give money for others to be able to do that. And I think that's one of the strong things, that when we speak to people abroad, when we see people abroad, they're the ones who are using their skills, they're the ones who are using their time, they're the ones who are making things happen, but they can only do it because people from richer countries have provided the money.
So if I say, well, I was going to say, no, in England now, I was clued into this on this last trip to Kenya, that there's something going on with sort of the great white savior kind of look to it, which you were kind of getting at. We're giving money to the local people and empowering them to do the good works that they're doing, as opposed to us coming in there and being the ones. And I'm curious about that, because that must be a local or national English sort of thing. It's not that way in the U.S. at all. No one's talking about that sort of thing.
Well, I think that's right. I think where the white savior is an issue, and in fact, I listened to a radio program today where the lady who was being interviewed said they don't want white tears. It's the same idea. It's very much a matter of doing something, not going there pretending we have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I have learned a lot from being with the African people, with the Kenyans, especially how involved they are with their neighbourhoods, how involved they are with their community, and it's something that I think I've picked up and I'm grateful for. In fact, when we go out there, the Kenyans quite often say, "Will I speak to them at church?" Well, I think, why would I speak to you at church? I want you to speak to me. I want to understand what's going on in your world. I want to understand your culture. I want to understand where you're at. Because how can I, someone who doesn't actually live with you or understand the way you live, tell you what to do or guide you in many ways at all until I know you better? So I prefer to go and listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I go to Haiti a lot, and it's definitely, I often and telling the Lord as I'm driving across town that takes forever. Should in a place like in our countries it would take 20 minutes. There it takes an hour and a half or more because of the roads and the traffic and the whatever and what. So there's plenty of time to think while you're traveling. But I just say, Lord, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just here. It's like I will show up. I will come and then show me what I'm supposed to do here. And that's happened a lot. It's very interesting.
I tell you another little story there. We went to Twelly, so with Joshua and Rosemary, and I said, so what's happening tomorrow on Sunday? And he asked whether I would talk to them, and I said no, because I've come to listen. And he was a bit upset, but that's life. And then a bit later I said to him, so what's the timetable tomorrow? He said, well, we'll go into church at 11 o'clock or whatever time it was. We won't be having an early service, we'll just have the breaking of bread. He said, because you've said you won't do the early service. So I was a bit alarmed at that. And Alison said, well, I could do something. So he was quite pleased, and we ended up with Alison doing something very similar to what we had done at King's Heath, or somebody else had done at King's Heath recently, which was taking a Bible verse and teaching it to them as a verse and where it came from, and then singing a hymn about it. And it worked really well. So we can't always say it's not down to us and we won't talk to you. Mm-hmm. But I prefer to listen rather than talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm aware I have mixed feelings anymore. I started doing Bible conferences, organizing them, bringing people in to speak in Haiti, maybe 6 or 8 years ago. And now I'm starting to feel like, because they make a big deal of it, it's a whole weekend, and it's, it's good for them. Part of my feeling was I didn't really know what they were getting on a regular basis, so I wanted to bring in somebody interesting who maybe would have something to offer that they wouldn't normally hear, and maybe a little more in depth or something. But they don't need us. Well, they need us. They need us to help. They need us with our resources. I just always look like I'm a bridge to resources.
Yeah.
So you tell me what you need to do, what you want to do. We talk about it. Then I go try to
find the resources.
Find it.
But I think even if there wasn't a noticeable thing like colour, there would still be the same concept. Mm-hmm. So
you have your pictures. You have to describe them.
I have my pictures. Let me tell you about my pictures. So the first picture I've got here is of a lady standing outside a building with lots of children. And at first sight, it looks like it might be a school or something like that. It's only because I've been there and I know the lady that I can recognise it as being her house. And the reason that all of these children are standing outside her house is because she's giving them something to eat. And the reason she's giving them something to eat is because they're all living in her house at the moment, because the school, which would normally put them up during term time, is closed for school holidays. So she's taken in 30 children or something into her house. And there's a verse in Isaiah that talks about bringing the homeless poor into your house. And I think she's doing that in a way that I find it difficult to get my head around. It's amazing. So that's something that we can learn about the big hearts of people there. The second picture I've got is of a school. It's a state school. There are lots of children here, all with a bowl of food in front of them. The school is supported by Meal A Day, only in as much as Meal A Day helps fund the food. These children have got very poor uniforms. And uniforms are important because if a child gets knocked over on the way to school, they're recognised by their uniform. That's how they know where they've come from. And
What do you mean knocked over?
by a car,
Oh, okay.
if there's an accident, these children are walking quite long distances and by themselves quite often. It's a very hard life. And Meal A Day is able to provide a small amount of things for them, and hopefully help them with an education that means in later life they will be able to look after themselves in a better way. And the next one that I've got in front of me is a picture of Alison, who is my wife, a lady, Rosemary, and a lot of other children. And it's because we went for a walk around the village. I said I wanted to go for a walk and see what was there. And as we went round, we picked up more and more children. And then we stopped here and they sang a song. But we had been into somebody's house, into a very basic house. They demanded that we had gone in there. They gave us soda, which I'm sure they couldn't afford. They went and got a chicken that they wanted to kill for us and feed us there and then. We said we didn't have time. We certainly didn't want to take their chicken. But if you look at this picture carefully, you can see that the chicken has been tied up and it's being carried back because they wouldn't let us go without the chicken. And because we said we wouldn't take the chicken, they gave us peanuts as well. We shouldn't have been able to take them, but we couldn't say no. It was an amazing situation, and it's all because Rosemary here is part of that community, and the people say how much she has helped them in different ways. Amazing learning there.
How did you deal with, in like going to Kenya? Do you remember the first time you saw abject poverty, and how you reacted to that?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think I came across poverty before Meal A Day. So my first recollection really was my wife's Australian, or my wife's father's Australian. And so we went out to see her family, and we stopped in Thailand, and there we saw people living under the bridge, using the water of the river to wash in, using the water of the river to clean their teeth in, using the river to do their business in, using the river to wash their clothes in. And it was actually quite a difficult thing to get your head round. More recently, as you mentioned, all these Lonely Planet books I've got, I've been privileged to go around the world for the company I work for, and I would find it incredibly difficult to think how I could get my head around staying in a hotel where I ordered a Coke, and that Coke would cost a week's wages for the person who was serving it to me. Okay, another example of that as well. My boss and I at work went to Ghana, and we had got a bit of time before the flight back, so we said to the driver, did he want to go for a meal? Where was a nice place to go? So he took us to a local place, and we had a couple of drinks and our main meal, and then it was time to go, so we asked for the bill and offered our credit card, and they didn't take credit cards. So we spoke to the driver. He said, well, I haven't got any money. And the only money I got was a small amount of change where I bought a map at the hotel earlier that day, and they'd given me some local currency in exchange for my English note. And we said, well, how much is it? And it turned out that I got enough money in that change for a meal for 3 people, and it was relatively lavish for what he would be used to, and we could afford to pay for it out of the change of a map. It was, again, quite eye-opening.
What would you say the some of the biggest learnings you've had from your Meal A Day experience?
I think there are lots of different learnings. One is the committee that run Meal A Day is quite broad. So we come from slightly different places. We come from different churches with different outlooks on life. But we manage to work together very well because we tend to keep to the almost the Good Samaritan principle of what are we about, what are we doing. So that's very helpful. We've got very different skills within that committee, so we can learn from each other, and we listen to each other rather than thinking we know everything. And then when it comes to in-country, I'm just amazed at how clever some of these people are in Kenya. One in particular is he wanted to have a well in his village because so many people were dying from bad water. That well was put in. The well's now been working for 4 or 5 years, and he's started to bottle that water now so that he can sell it and fund one of the other projects that he's dealing with. It's just amazing love being shown around that community, and there's tremendous learning for us. Mm-hmm. People talk to each other about, meet my brother, and it's not a brother at all. It's not a member of our church, not a physical brother, but just close and therefore working together and called brother, which is, it's nice.
It is nice. Yeah.
I keep thinking of these new stories to tell you. Another one is at Layla. We went there one year and saw the people there, and that was fine. We went back a year later, and the question or comment was made, "Do you want to come and see our new school?" "What do you mean your new school?" "Well, we've built a new school." So in 1 year, the time between we were there last time and the time we were there this time, a school had been built. So how did that happen then? Well, the person that owned the land gave them the land because they liked what they saw at Layla. So a Muslim lady gave the land to a Christian school. We're all made in the image of God, whether we're Christian or Muslim. And then the work needed to be done. Well, the Chinese were building roads. The Chinese needed water. Layla had got water. And Layla said to the Chinese, "You can have some water to build your roads if you give us sand and cement and the other things that we need." And so these people, out of nothing, built a school in a year. Well, we wouldn't get the planning done in a year. So it's amazing. It just you just see what they're able to achieve when they set their mind to it.
Yeah. Yes. It is.
So if we start talking about the skills that we have and how we use them, the reality is that there are only a number of opportunities in any charity for people to do things, and particularly in a charity like Meal A Day, because we fund, we might go and look at projects, we might give some ideas, we might share our knowledge and our experience, but it might not be the best knowledge or experience in the culture that we're dealing with, but some things will be useful, some things will be good. But there are more things that can be done. There is the opportunity every now and then for people to join Meal A Day, to become project managers, to become ambassadors. There's the opportunity for people to understand more about what Meal A Day does and share that knowledge and news with their own churches, and perhaps raise money so that more good things can be done. And the other thing is, it may be just an inspiring thing that people say, okay, I can see that this good is being done by Meal A Day. There's not place for me at the moment. I don't see that I can do a great deal there. But they can be motivated to work with another charity that does equally good things, and in some way contribute. Or, of course, if they've got a skill, a special skill of some kind which would be needed in one of these developing lands, then they can go out and help in the projects, either independently or with the blessing of Meal A Day. So it's a matter of what skills they have got and what they are trying to achieve to what can be done. I mean, when I joined Meal A Day, I came in as a compliance person, which isn't really a very exciting role in terms of getting to know the people overseas, but it gave me an opening. It made me see what was available. It was evident that there was much more resource needed within Meal A Day to make things happen rather than just relying on Paul Lucas to do everything in Kenya. And so I took on some of that work, and since then several other people have joined and also taken some of the workload, which has got to be the right thing to do. A lot of my job was about change and about change management. It was much more exciting if we were changing something than if we were just keeping something the same. And whenever you change something, it's not just a physical building or tangible things you're changing. You've got all the emotion that runs with it. You've got all the people you've got to work with. And change, people either love change because it's going to be better, or they hate it because they perceive it's not going to be as good for them. They are going to lose out. There'll be something going wrong for them. And it's trying to bring people around to that change to see the benefits of it, which comes with any job which involves change. It's bringing people along as well as actually making that physical change. And with Meal A Day, the things we are doing is making a change, or we are funding people to make a change. And it's that sort of project that I find really interesting, really exciting, really beneficial. Give you the example of a change. A well had been put into a village, and we thought, well, that's nice, and we saw people come and fill their containers. I didn't really think a great deal of it, but we spoke to the headmaster of that village a bit later, and he was talking about how great this well was and that it saved his children a walk. And I said, well, how many children have you got? He said, well, there are about 1,000 of them. And how far do they walk? Well, in the worst conditions, they're walking a couple of hours a day to get their water. And with the well, then they can just get it locally. And you think, well, that's saving 2,000 hours a day, that well. It's amazing. And is it surprising that they are so pleased to have this water? Not only is it there on tap, literally on tap, but it's clean, and it's not full of things that are going to make them ill. And as I said before, it gives them time in the day to do other things like learn and get education and this sort of thing. So it's tremendous. Yeah, I mean, with one of the organisations we work with is Kenya Rainwater Association, and what they do is demand that the local village finds 10% of the cost. And that way they've got the ownership of having paid for it, as well as the ownership of the importance of it being there. And it just seems to be a good way of working. Another thing I was going to tell you, though, as well, one of the things that I've really noticed, and that is how the people in Kenya trust in a God. And you go to a meeting, for instance, at a school, and even if you're not with a Christadelphian audience, they will quite possibly open their meeting with a prayer, quite possibly close it with a prayer. And on one example was really good was with Paul Lucas. He was at Kibera, and he got this board meeting together, and there was a volunteer there, a social worker, not paid anything, but she's helping with the project, not a Christadelphian, local person, but qualified and able to help the project. And Paul was saying, well, I think this is we are a church, and this the church is coming together, and we're having a meeting, and I think it would be quite nice to open with a prayer. Do you mind if we do that? And before anything could be said, she just started the prayer. She opened the meeting in prayer when Paul wasn't asking her to. He was just asking if she would mind it if we did it around her. But it just shows you the difference in the faith in that nation and the culture that they live in to what would happen if you did it here.
Right. I'm struck by that in Haiti a lot with them. Because I look at it and think, why aren't you blaming God for this mess? They don't.
Yeah.
It's like they trust in God.
Yeah.
And rightly so. I mean, that's the thing. It's like we have our whole skewed view of what life has to be like. They're generally functional and happy, in quotes. I mean, they're fine. They're living. They don't know. Well, I don't know. It just strikes me a lot of times. I know the spirituality in Haiti surprises me.
Yeah.
They just think, hey, this is a mess.
Yeah.
This is so hard. One thing to finish up on, maybe, is, but it's we touched on it, and the thing is with your job and the change management, that kind of thing, and we talked at the beginning about diversity and inclusion issues, which a lot of ecclesias are facing more of. In Bloomington, we have a couple of Iranian families, and it makes it different. There's differences. We actually have a sister from the Congo now who doesn't speak any English, only speaks French. And one brother translated most of his exhortation using Google Translate or something,
Right.
and bounced back and forth just to try to include her in some way or show her. But it was kind of disjointed, but it was a nice effort. Everybody was thinking John made a good effort, and that was a nice thing to do. But here's what I've heard when I was working that I'd hear all the time, and what you can speak to, I think, is the whole idea of diversity and inclusion makes us stronger. How? I tend to think to myself, yeah, but it's those people who are diverse from me who just make it so much not as easy to just get stuff done or something, because there are language barriers, or I don't know, they're not quite like me. So how is this diversity thing a good thing? And in our ecclesias, how is diversity and inclusion a good thing for us or for our meetings?
Well, my view is that diversity is actually important. First of all, we have to define what we mean by diversity. And diversity probably means getting away from anything which is to do with racial issues, age issues, gender issues, sexuality issues. And the reality is that society is made up of people who are male and female, older and younger, of different colours, of different cultures, and they all have something to add. They've all got God-given talents, and we can either use them or not use them. And if we don't use the talents, we don't use them at our cost. And we also don't encourage people who appreciate a slightly different way of thinking to come along to our meetings to understand what the message of Jesus is really about. Because the message of Jesus isn't about being white, grey and middle-aged. It's a message to the whole world. And it's in my opinion, easy to lose that whole message of Jesus by keeping it at a level which might have been appropriate in an age, whatever that age was, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 50 years ago. But if I speak to my children today, and I've got 6 of them, they do not associate with a lifestyle that hasn't really existed any of my life, let alone theirs. And if we want to remain relevant, if we want to get the involvement of a current generation, we've got to operate in a way which they relate to. For a church to be effective, it must communicate with them. And if we don't communicate with them, we're not really a church. And I've heard it said, and I agree with it, that our generation and the generation of our parents have probably got quite a lot to answer for in terms of not adjusting and adapting to meet the needs of the generation that they were trying to help and lead. So I think diversity is important.
Mm-hmm. I guess it stretches us because we have differences, and it's not necessarily easy to relate to another culture, another person, culturally, that sort of thing, I guess.
Well, that's true, but as I went around the world and spoke to people, the thing that amazed me for a start was that as I went around in my work life and spoke to people, the first thing that amazed me was that somebody could speak not just one language, but probably 2, 3, 4, 5 different languages. You would sit down at a table with a French and a person and a Dutch person, a German person, an English person, and you'll find there was someone there just joining in different conversations in different languages around the table. So that immediately makes me think they must be pretty clever. So surely they're worth listening to. And the world we live in, girls are educated probably to a higher level in many cases than boys. So why would we listen to boys and not girls? If you take the Bible words and you read them as they are on the page without any context, there is a clear message. If you read them with context, you potentially come to a very different message. And I think we have to understand how we think those words were meant to be understood when they were given and who they were given to. And maybe we have to accept some people will come to one conclusion and some people will come to another. But the people who come to the more contemporary understanding will find themselves much more comfortable in King's Heath. And the other side of the coin, of course, is those people who don't come to that contemporary understanding will find themselves more comfortable in a more traditional church. And my view is that we have to have both, probably, so that we can meet the needs of all people, perhaps called diversity, but not lose the message of Jesus for the sake of really what was described by my daughter, I think, as fertile, which is a fertile church, is where we do not get caught up in menial things such as wearing hats. Why would I go there to discuss whether we should wear hats? And here I think menial probably meant boring or valueless. And that's where she's coming from, and that's why I believe there is a need for contemporary churches to spread the message of Jesus in the way that's relevant to people today.